All right, today we're diving into one of those iconic American stories, a tale of true heroism that you probably learned back in school. But as you're about to see, the story behind the story, well, that's where things get really interesting.
I mean, just picture this. It's August 1814. Washington, D.C. is in absolute chaos. British troops are literally marching on the president's house. And right in the middle of all that, First Lady Dolly Madison is writing these incredible, defiant words to her sister. She's refusing to leave until a symbol of the nation is safe. Seriously, it's the stuff of movies.
But here's the twist. What if that's not quite how it happened? Historians now have some pretty compelling evidence that suggests this dramatic, on-the-scene letter, the main source we have for this moment, might not have been written in 1814 at all. So that brings up a massive question, right? How do we separate what actually happened in history from the story we tell about it?
To really get to the bottom of this historical puzzle, we need to go back and understand the crisis that started it all. This is a story about a country at war, a capital city about to be set on fire, and a first lady who completely stepped up.
So America's second war with Great Britain, the War of 1812, had been going on for a couple of years. But honestly, for most people living in Washington, D.C., the fighting felt pretty far away. That was about to change, and fast.
The whole game changed in April of 1814. See, Britain finally defeated Napoleon over in Europe, and suddenly that freed up thousands of their most experienced soldiers, who they then sent straight over to the U.S. After a really, really bad American defeat at the Battle of Bladensburg, which President Madison actually saw with his own eyes, the path to the capital was just wide open. The war had literally shown up on the White House doorstep. And who's at the center of all this? Dolly Madison. And you gotta understand, she wasn't just the president's wife. Oh no, she was a political force in her own right. Her Wednesday night parties, they were so popular they were nicknamed screezes, were the place to be. They were essential for getting anything done, bringing political enemies together under one roof. She was in a lot of ways the unofficial queen of Washington. And this is what was on the line. The president's house, this powerful symbol of the brand new republic that Dolly had spent so much time making a home, within hours, it would just be a burned out, empty shell. The British weren't just attacking a building. They were trying to set fire to the very idea of America.
With the American army retreating and the president himself away from the city, the job of saving the nation's most precious items, well, that fell to one person, Dolly Madison.
And the most important treasure of all was this one, the giant, full-length portrait of General George Washington. Look, this was not just a piece of art. It was a powerful, physical symbol of the nation itself. It was a direct connection to America's founding father. Losing it would have been an absolutely devastating blow to the country's morale.
Now, the government had paid $800 for this portrait. That might not sound like a ton of money to us today, but in the early 1800s, that was a huge amount. It just goes to show you how valuable this one painting was to the young country. Leaving it for the British to capture or destroy was just not an option. So while everybody else was panicking, and I mean everybody, including the soldiers who were supposed to be guarding the house, they took off before she did, Dolly stayed completely calm. First, she packed up vital government papers into trunks. Then she focused on the portrait. When someone told her it was screwed to the wall and would take way too long to get down, she gave a simple order: break the frame. So they did. They cut the canvas out, gave it to a couple of men to get to safety, and only then, with the British Army literally marching into the city, did she finally flee. An unbelievable act of courage, right? And we know all these amazing details because of that famous letter she wrote. But, and here's the big but, we're back to our central mystery. Is that letter telling us the story as it happened, or is it telling the story as it was remembered, and maybe polished years later?
So let's play detective and look at the evidence. First up, the original letter from 1814? It's never been found. It doesn't exist. The only version we have in her own handwriting is a copy she made herself from a book that was published in the 1830s. We're talking more than 20 years after the fact. Historians also point out that the tone is so formal and dramatic. It doesn't really sound like a private note to her sister. It sounds more like it was written for the history books. And here's maybe the biggest clue. We can compare the famous sister letter to another one we know she wrote just a few months after the fire to her friend Mary Latrobe. And the difference is just night and day. The Latrobe letter is very factual, very personal. She just says, "I sent out the silver and General Washington's picture." That's it. There's no big dramatic story. One sounds like a suspenseful narrative,
The other sounds like a quick update to a friend.
Okay, now I want to be really, really clear about this. Nobody is questioning her heroism. Not at all. The basic facts are confirmed by lots of sources, including that Latrobe letter. Dolly Madison absolutely 100% saved the cabinet papers and the George Washington portrait. The only thing in question is how we got that famous story. It seems very likely that years later, she sort of refined the memory to create a more powerful, lasting historical record.
So, what's the takeaway here? It means that history isn't just a simple list of facts, it's also a collection of stories. And sometimes, those stories get shaped and polished by the very people who lived them, long after the events actually happened.
This whole thing is a fantastic lesson in how we should look at history. We have a term for documents like her letter. We call it a primary source, a first-hand account. But as this case shows, even primary sources can be, well, crafted. They're a product of someone's memory, their purpose for writing, and who they're writing for. Dolly Madison wasn't just remembering her past, she was actively building her own legacy for the future.
And that really just leaves us with one final thought. Does knowing the complicated story behind the letter make what she did any less heroic? Or does the messy truth, the idea of an older Dolly Madison carefully writing down the story of her younger self's bravery, actually make her a more complex, more interesting, and maybe even more human figure? It shows a woman who not only saved history, but knew exactly how she wanted it to be written.